At the Valdai discussion club, Putin stated that the era of colonialism is over. We are defending our borders, our culture, and our people. What's your take on this?
Putin came over very strong at Valdai. It was a crucible moment here. He seemed a little angry, but the anger was contained. And he said pretty much, who are the Western powers, and specifically the US, to tell us what to do, to tell us which laws to follow, to tell us what punishment we can expect if we don't obey their diktats. And at one point, pretty early on, he says, who are they? Who are they to tell us? It was a spontaneous applause. So what I'm saying here is pretty much a watershed. Putin has sort of said, well, I can't deal with these people anymore in a locatory way. In other words, you can't really talk to them in a equal way. They continue to act like colonial masters, is the way he put it. And that's not for me. That's it. So what's the alternative? Well, he said something really interesting in terms of my memory. He said, look, we don't look at the world as having one kind of hegemon. We see all countries as different, but okay. I mean, we see them as equal. Whoa, equal. And so we see a multipolarity world coming in here, and we think that's a good thing. We just have to respect one another and not think we have to obey made-up rules, the so-called rules-based order, which we can't really even find in WikiLeaks. There's no definition for it. Obviously, it simply means what the U.S., what the West says goes, and that's it, end of story. And then he talked about the West. He said, we don't want to leave the West. We haven't closed the famous door or the famous window to the West that Peter the Great opened, It's the West that has pulled down an iron curtain, a new iron curtain on us. And, that's their choice. I mean, we're okay with that. We think that it's bad for everyone, including the West, but we're reaching to the East and we're doing just fine, thank you. Our economy is thriving in a relatively to the states in Europe and to the United States as well. So the sanctions didn't work. We have a burgeoning relationship with China and other countries in Western as well as Eastern Asia. So, if the West is going to continue to act this way, it's on them. We've tried. We've failed. Don't accuse us of turning eastward because we wanted to. We're turning eastward because the West has slammed down the window that Peter the Great opened famously back in the early 1700s. He finally got rid of those Swedes that invaded Russia for centuries before. He beat them, okay? And then he said, all right, look, I don't hold it against you Swedes, you Germans, you Finns, you Danish people, you people who have invaded us for ever since the Mongols left us. You've been trying to invade us from the West. We're holding it against you. We want to be part of Europe. And that's when Peter the Great said, look, we'll look out into the Baltic. We'll develop relationships with the West. And something that many people don't know is that before he was crowned Tsar, Peter the Great went to Rotterdam in the Netherlands for 2 years. And he worked there incognito on wharves and other places. And he learned what it's like in the West. And when he came of age and was crowned Tsar of Russia, he said, this system in the West works much better than what we're used to when Genghis Khan and those fellows. So I'm going to turn to the West. And of course, he overdid it. He said, okay, shave off your beards, and use a sickle or use a scythe rather than a sickle, Well, old customs die really hard. So he encountered a lot of resistance, but he made it work. And that was the early 1700s. You come down to Catherine the Great, late 1700s, at the time of the American Revolution. And Russia was prospering and expanding and going down to places like Sevastopol in Crimea and expanding that way and creating a warm water naval port, the only one they really have still. And if the West thought that they were going to steal that warm water naval port, ice-free all year round in Sevastopol and the Crimea, well, they didn't know anything about Russian history or Russian strategic needs. So he's being very clear. Look, this is a strategic situation. You slam the door on us. We're not going to obey your diktat. And I'm going to hang around for as long as you have questions. And how long was that? 3 hours. Not a note, sitting down, kind of jocularly answering one or two. We're dealing with a very, very bright man, and in my view, a cautious man. And we should be very thankful for that, because God knows who would replace Vladimir Putin were he to die or be removed. So this is news to my friends in the United States, but that's only because they've been so brainwashed on the fact that Putin really has two horns, looks like the devil, and then he also has his little mustache, he looks like Hitler, and he can't be dealt with. That's wrong, and the time has come, at least in Ukraine, to deal with him. And this is the crucible now. The President of the United States has said Russia has already lost in Ukraine. Nothing could be further from the truth. And so now that Russia has already won in Ukraine, what is President Biden? What are his advisors, Blinken and Sullivan and Nuland? What are they going to do? Well, one would hope that they would come to their senses and say, well, to the degree we actually believe these intelligence people, like William Burns, who confidently said not only has Russia lost, but the inability of the Russian armed forces to achieve their goals has been laid bare for the whole world to see. God, I don't know what universe he's living on. His nominal boss, Avril Haines, said at the turn of the year, I'm very optimistic about the Ukrainian counteroffensive because the Russians are running out of ammunition. Actually, they have no indigenous capability to produce ammunition. So it looks pretty good for the counteroffensive. Well, she must have got mixed up because it wasn't Russia that's running out of ammunition. It's the United States. It's NATO. Now, that's not funny because, Ukraine has been left in the lurch now after being sold a bill of goods that we would be there forever, right? Until as long as it takes. Well, yeah, as long as it takes, but we have no more artillery or tank shells to give you. Sorry about that. Oh, they don't have any either. No, sorry. We'll do our best. Maybe next year we'll send you some fighter. Well, maybe we'll do that. So it's really crazy. And what bothers me most, and this is a new element, I haven't heard anyone else bringing this up, but Biden and son Hunter are in real trouble. They're doing an impeachment inquiry on him, which means that they can subpoena all manner of people. It looks like they have the goods on not only Hunter, but Joe, with respect to playing their title and their power to get monetary benefits. Bribery is what the word is. Not only that, but his lieutenants. Take Sullivan, Jacob Sullivan, for one. Everyone knows who reads the media that I write or that my friends write, that it was Jacob Sullivan that came up with the great idea to blame Russia for hacking into the Democratic National Committee, giving that hacked materials, those emails, to Julian Assange for the express purpose of defeating Hillary Clinton and easing in Donald Trump. Everybody knows that, okay? The Democrats held the Congress, that is, held the House of Representatives in 2017, but they lost in 2017. The Congress was just about to change. And so the Democrats were able to get the head of this cyber firm, CrowdStrike, the one that the FBI, in its wisdom, gave the job of looking into the Democratic National Committee computers and to find out who hacked, how the Russians hacked and all that stuff, okay? Now, they got the head of that cyber firm. His name was Sean Henry. The cyber firm's name is CrowdStrike. They got him under oath, okay? And Adam Schiff says to him, and the testimony is available, okay? He says to him, now, Mr. Henry, tell us when and how the Russians hacked into the Democratic National Committee. And Henry is about to speak, and his lawyer grabs him and says, and Henry says, actually, we have no technical evidence that the Russians hacked into the Democratic National Committee. Matter of fact, we have no technical evidence that anyone hacked into the Democratic National Committee. Wow. Did you not see any internet used here? No, we didn't. Why do you think the Russians hacked? Oh, we have some circumstantial evidence. Well, now, this was December 5th, 2017. What did Adam Schiff, the incoming chair of the House Intelligence Committee, do? He put that testimony in the bottom of his safe. He wouldn't release it, okay? So people are asking about that testimony, and finally somebody says, hey, President Trump, you're the president, so you could get that released. He's, oh. So the president asked his national intelligence director, you tell Adam Schiff, you're going to release that information tomorrow if he doesn't do it first. So, wonder of wonders, on May 7th, 2020, 3 years and 2 days ago, that testimony was released. They put it in the midst of about 50 released documents so that it might be missed. And sure enough, it was missed. Did the New York Times report it? No. Did the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal? No mainstream medium reported it. Why is this important? Well, it's important because it shows that there was interference in the election of 2016. Who wasn't the Russians? It was the Democrats.
Vladimir Putin has obviously your friend and mine.
Yes, indeed.
He has intervened in our election in the past.
Right.
It's not something, as you experienced firsthand, it's not something we talk about a lot. Do you fear that that is something that could be happening for 2024? And do you think we should be talking about it more?
Well, I think we should be talking about it more because I don't think, despite all of the, deniers, there's any doubt that he interfered in our election or that he has interfered in many ways in the internal affairs of other countries, funding political parties, funding, political candidates, buying off, government officials in different places. So that is his opus, his opus operandi, in the sense that he hates democracy. He particularly hates the West, and he especially hates us.
It was Jacob Sullivan. That's how I started out. It was his idea, okay? He was a big campaign manager or semi-manager for Hillary Clinton. And when those emails came out, they were so damaging. They were so damaging to Hillary Clinton, and that this is the point, of course. They showed that the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and Hillary Clinton's folks made it impossible for Bernie Sanders to be a real contender for the nomination. In other words, they stole the nomination from an increasingly popular Bernie Sanders and made it so that Bernie Sanders couldn't win the nomination and Hillary Clinton was a shoo-in. That's what everybody thought, right? When I say everybody, who else? Well, there's a fellow head of the FBI. His name was James Comey. He's still around somewhere, okay? Now, what did he say? Well, he said that he wrote this in his book, okay, did a memoir. He said, I was operating in an environment in which I was sure that Hillary Clinton would be the next president of the United States, okay? Oh, so you were sure. So does that explain, Mr. Comey, why you took great liberties with the law and regulations and did all you could, whether it was legal or not, to help Mrs. Clinton win the election, thinking that you would be rewarded for this and never put in jail? Is that why you didn't send the FBI to investigate the computers at the Democratic National Committee, but appointed somebody who had worked for you guys for 20 years, Sean Henry, to go ahead and do that, and then give everybody the impression, including the intelligence community, that it was the Russians that hacked it? Is that why you did all that, James Comey? Well, yeah, I guess, they got him under oath one time. The Senate committee was that Grassley from Iowa. And he said, now, Mr. Comey, do you remember when there was that Russian intelligence report back in July of 2016? And the report said that Hillary Clinton had made this all up about the Russian hack. Do you remember that? And Comey said, no, it doesn't ring any bells. John Brennan, the head of the CIA, filed a crimes report on that. So James Comey must have known about that, but doesn't ring any bell. Now, what's the teaching point here? What did Grassley do? He went on to the next question. And Grassley himself, who among other senators has been at least as involved in monitoring intelligence work, Grassley himself wrote an email around that time. And he said, this is really interesting. A lawyer who had falsified documents for a FISA request, Federal Intelligence Surveillance Act, a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which necessary to monitor things like Donald Trump and his associates, he lied. He struck out something and substituted the other, okay? So he didn't get any jail time.
Why? Well, his wife was expecting, and he's a good guy, and don't no jail time, okay? So it is at that point that Chuck Grassley wrote this. It's a tweet with Grassley's name on it. He says, now I see that it's really the Department of Just Us. If you get the play on words, it's not the Department of Justice. It's the Department of Just Us, with the Justice Department and the FBI deliberately doing whatever they wanted without any fear of being uncovered. Now, that's interesting. I mean, Grassley's the guy that's supposed to be looking into this. Oversight is what he's supposed to be doing. So here's one of the key senators supposed to be exercising oversight over the intelligence community. He's become an overlook committee. And he throws up his hands and he says, well, isn't it interesting that the Department of Justice has become the Department of Just Us? So in all this, what I'd like you to understand is that there's no monitoring of the intelligence community that Comey, Hillary Clinton, Jacob Sullivan, who pretty much was the author of this Russiagate thing. Just to backtrack 1 second, when those emails were revealed on the second day of the Democratic National Congress in July of 2016, there was high dudgeon. What are we going to do? Well, it was Sullivan, I'm sure. I can't show you a document, but it was Sullivan. So I know what we'll do. We'll blame it on the Russians. And Hillary says, well, but it wasn't the Russians. It was WikiLeaks. That's okay. What we'll say, we don't like either of them. So what we'll say is that the hack, the information from the hack of the Democratic National Committee, there was no hack, we know that now, was given to the Russians to make you lose, okay? That all went down before the election. That was the story, okay? And after the election, that went into high gear. And when Trump came in, I hold no brief for Trump, but he didn't know how Washington worked. And they did a job on him. They made it impossible for him to reach out to the Russians or do anything else that was really constructive. And we know the results of that. We see them now in Ukraine.